This past week, Stephen Attewell died. He was a prominent member of the A Song of Ice and Fire book fandom for years. I mean, a major site leader. He ran the Race for the Iron Throne analysis blog, where he was a historian, so he would make a lot of analytic essays about how things in Westeros compared to real life stuff. He would also do breakdowns of the TV show throughout its run. Earlier, he was pretty prominent in this, and I felt this deserved a video, even though I don't really know how to talk about it. And I didn't know him as well as a lot of other people. But this is a heavy blow to A Song of Ice and Fire fandom in general, for Westeros fandom in general, that we will never be able to replicate the level of work that he did. I mean, he is the level of historical analysis essay writer that I aspire to be but never achieved. I own copies of his books that have been on my bookshelf, that these were Christmas presents for me, that he wrote 2 volumes, which were, he was going through the A Song of Ice and Fire novels in order, and first was like 2014, the next 2018, I think. He did one on the real-life political medieval stuff in A Game of Thrones, the first novel, and then one on Volume 2 was on stuff that came up in A Clash of Kings. And now there will never be one on A Storm of Swords. There will never be a 3rd volume of that. That this is someone prominent enough that you could walk into a bookstore and in the fan analysis, real-life comparison sections to like Star Wars or other franchises, he had published books, which is a level of fandom that few ever achieve in terms of his professionalism, his level of dedication to all of this, and the quality of his work. I am deeply rattled because, well, is it surprising that he died? Yes and no, because he was sick with cancer for some time, starting around 2017, but every time he'd pop up in public, he'd say, I just had another round of chemo, but I'm doing better now. But I noticed that like 8 months would go by and he wouldn't post, but then he'd say, I'm back, I was doing chemo, but I'm better now, and then he wouldn't do it again. So he wasn't able to really talk about House of the Dragon that much. But like he was doing other stuff about, like, he's also a big figure in X-Men fandom, so he was doing like podcasts and stuff. He was working on things. But he was only 40 when he died. Now, he got this when he was like 33, that he got a very rare form of cancer. It's called synovial sarcoma. It is a cancer of the joints and muscle connective tissues in the knee. If you didn't think that was a thing, it's because it is literally a 1 in a million rare kind of cancer. You think cancer is in the organs with lots of chemicals in them, like the liver or the reproductive organs. It just, cancer of the connective tissues in the knee, which has a very high mortality rate, that this thing is a death sentence and you know it, that they talk about the survival rate 5 years after diagnosis. Survival rate 5 years after diagnosis is 50%. And he lived 7 years. The survival on this is very rare, very aggressive. He had to get his leg amputated in 2017, that to try to get rid of the tumor. He explained this in his blog, that the tumor basically destroyed all of the nerves below the knee, so even if they left the rest of his leg attached, it would have been paralyzed, and he would have just been prone to infection in it. So it was better just to amputate rather than have this source of infection. But that's still, that not only is it is a death sentence and quality of life wise, he lost a limb on top of this. The literally less than 300 people in the United States are diagnosed with this thing per year. Literally 1 in a million people in the United States get this per year. This is like getting struck by lightning or something. Diagnosed when he was around 33, dead by 40. He was 2 years older than me, and I'm also a history major, and he's what I aspire to do with everything in terms of a fandom contribution, and I like the phrase that I heard someone say that really encapsulated when someone dies unexpectedly. That it's not just the shock at losing them, but we're mourning all of the years that were stolen from us. That in terms of the quality of work, and obviously he wasn't working a lot after 27. He tried to put it, he was writing some things, but if you notice his work, he would say that this is what happened. I knew he got cancer in 2017. I thought he was getting better because every time he popped up again, he'd say, new round of chemo, but I'm okay now. That really, he was, I wasn't following it as closely because he wasn't updating his freaking, like, oh, well, I think he's getting better. But he was pretty open about this, but he could have been writing analysis articles on this for the next 30 years. Work that on analysis things tying in with that the world of Westeros TV franchise will keep this going, even beyond that. Well, Martin's only written so many books, and we don't think he's going to write that many more spin-offs, but he could have made so many tie-ins with the House of the Dragon is back, Dunk and Egg, which he's written extensively about because it was the first prequel decades ago. Even just those two things, not even getting into Targaryen conquest is probably going to happen. We are going to get like 3 TV projects in the next 5 years. There was so much he had to say that he only got 2 volumes done out of Race for the Iron Throne on the first and second books out of 5 printed ones. That there were so many tie-in things he was going to do with the TV show. And I'm saying, officially, this man was smarter than me, wiser than me, and kinder than me. And achieved a lot more than I did. And we always hear some pablum when someone dies about, oh, well, we have to work harder to try to match what they did. I know I will never match the level of quality of analysis that Stephen Attewell pointed out. This is a loss for all of us. We can aspire to make up some of the slack, but we will not achieve. We can't. Without him. There's only so much we can do in terms of his skill set. And he had a lot more to write. So it's just the senselessness of how rare of a cancer this is at such a young age. He is not a middle-aged person. 33, you get told you have a 1 in a million rare cancer of the knee that will kill you in 5 to 7 years. That is senseless. And it hits me because I didn't know him I didn't interact with him a lot online, particularly because he hasn't been as active since 2017, but what hits me is back when I am still a crazy person yelling on the internet, but when I was really starting out my channel, I started out in the break between season 6 and 7 on YouTube. Before that I was doing wiki stuff, but I launched my whole channel. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no equipment. I didn't think people would even watch my shit. So I'm yelling into a bad camera with no thought to outlining about this is what they're really doing behind the scenes. They've been deeply incompetent since day 1 on season 1, and HBO just hit it really well through a PR campaign. And when you my whole thing, when you actually sit down and listen to the Blu-ray commentary, which no one was reporting on, they're saying these bizarre things about, come on, kid, we just want to show off the actors. Which at the time was this failure of imagination. I know this is weird, hard to explain, particularly for a post-season 8 crowd. This was literally unthinkable, even after season 6, that, what do you mean they're just careerists who aren't even trying to make a coherent TV show? It's just Emmy pandering. The evidence was there, it was just unthinkable. It's as if you had the first 2 Lord of the Rings movies, and then the third one was blatantly just Jackson pushing them for Oscars. I mean, really obviously, cartoonishly obvious, but after the first 2 were so high quality, is just unthinkable. I'm not trying to insert that diatribe into every video. What I'm saying is, at the time when I was really not that good at this, but trying to shout as, Chicken Little, trying to Boy You Cry Wolf, trying to warn everyone in the lead up to season 7, this is what they're really doing. This is why they've been making weird, that we were overthinking it. Particularly season 5 onward, we were overthinking, well, I guess they have a weird interpretation of things. I just mental step back and realize they're frauds, and on top of that, they're just shilling for awards with the actors. It never occurred to us. Stephen Attewell was one of the first people who took my stuff seriously. And if you remember my videos, like the Battle of the Bastards video, which I took down because it was, my early work was amateur and incompetent, by my own admission, nonetheless, at the time, in his weekly reviews of Season 7, by the finale, he made this really big quote, Stephen Attewell, in the Race for the Iron Throne blog, where he said, "Dear God," like the scene between Cersei and Tyrion in the Season 7 finale, "this exists just to show off the actors and pander them for awards." And it sounded like he was quoting me, so in the comments section, people asked, are you espousing what the dragon demands? And he had this really nice quote in the comments where, responding to them, "Yeah, I am now completely convinced by the argument the dragon demands," is pointing out that this is what is really going on, and combined with his review of it, just the disgust in the finale, and looking back on the season as a whole, dear God, this is what was really happening, not just this season, but the whole time, because I was shouting that Season 6 was relatively well received, even like people who bought this in Season 5. Season 7 was progressively worse, and then Season 8 was even worse than that. Season 7, it was even worse than Season 5, in terms of the pandering, that it was, obviously there were things like, dear God, the offensiveness of a rape thing, or racism of TV torn, but it was hard, it was easier to see that, it was harder before. And among the first set of people who said, he's on to something, who actually was willing to publicly back up, or, retweet me. When I'm talking about, like, when I was a nobody. And not even that prominently. It's not like you went on a limb for me. I didn't know him very well, but it meant a lot to me that someone whose work I was reading for years and look up to, one of the first people to really semi-legitimately, just to prove my sanity, if nothing else, went, yeah, they really are just cynical careerists pushing actors around. So many other people, the entire counter-argument was, they wouldn't do that. HBO would never allow it to happen. Because that's unfair, that's unthinkable. Which is a symptom for a lot of people. So this guy really was one of the first people to take me seriously. Even though I know I'm still a person yelling on the internet, but compared to the shit I put out in 2017, that's why I deleted most of my old videos. They were deeply incompetent, and I yell too much, I know it, and they're repetitive. But even ignoring that, I mean, forget, because a lot of people have agreed with me later. Just knowing that I won't have a third volume of the Race for the Iron Throne book series is just purely, forget that he supported, repeated my thing and started taking me seriously once, that just the level of work he was putting out, even before the show went bad, that this is what I want, that there aren't analysis books anymore like that. Remember when the show started, through around when Season 5, it turned into just a celebrity cult, there used to be analysis essays. And sometimes people would put them together into fan-made books. Or YouTube videos that were essentially analysis essays, video essays. And it turned into this celebrity cult where people just, it is weird when you see like panel recordings of the pro TV show people by like Season 7 where they don't talk about things. It's just a collection of memes. And I like to think that's turning around again for House of the Dragon, that you see essays about the role of women, or women in a male-dominated society, with Alicent and her characterization versus Rhaenyra. We're turning back towards characterization and analysis and stuff. Who knows when we'll have books on the level of Stephen Attewell's Race for the Iron Throne, print paperback books that are historical essays. Or just a nice essay he made about, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, a chapter in his book about how Braavos compares to the Venetian Republic in real life, this other mercantile power, or political parties in Volantis. Elections and politics, how is this compared to, well, when did political parties become a thing? Is this kind of realistic? Well, there's some comparisons we can draw, just other real-life historical things. and he put them in context, or how the elections in the Kingsmoot, that was a really good one of comparing the political things. So I don't know when we're going to have analysis like that again, much less on his level. And it's the years we lost, that he could have done so much more. He had, at the beginning of his life, practically, and he had another 30 years of this, with this as a revived franchise. And he didn't deserve that. And everyone liked him. And cancer of the knee at 33, 7 years to live, 1 in a million diagnosis, literally. There was so much more. He did better work than I ever could, and I will never match that. That we will never be able to make up for this loss. In terms of the analytical capacity, this is a heavy blow to the entire fandom, book or TV. Because he was covering both. He also did X-Men stuff, like I said. He was so prolific, and when he was healthy... I'm reminded from that of that quote by that Hertzfeld cartoon, World of Tomorrow. I know it's stupid, just when someone else died a couple of years ago, it just really stuck with me, that quote that you are alive today, you have now. You're alive now. And the quote is, now is the envy of all the dead. I know this is stupid. I am not the person to eulogize him. I'll link you to better articles of people who really knew him. I didn't. But just that you can be struck down like that randomly in your 30s is stunning. This is like getting struck by lightning, the randomness of his death. Even though it was a prolonged illness in which he was suffering and had an amputation that just for 5 years, but still, like the Hamilton thing, right? If everyone, the only meaning I can take from this is write like you're running out of time, because you are. And we have now, and do everything you can with now, because now is the envy of all the dead. Stephen Attewell, this is a heavy blow. I didn't know him well, but he was nicely one of the first real major bloggers to recirculate my stuff and just say, yeah, I actually agree with, he's not a crazy person, he's onto something. Which was very nice of him, and I put slides of it in my earlier videos. Wow. When are we going to have people on this level of making real fan-made analytic essay books again? On his level, I don't know what we're going to do. I'll link to things in the description box about his friends who blogged about his passing. You can get his 2 books that he did put out. Race Through the Iron Throne, Volume 1 and 2. They're very good. I own them. I like this phrase from a Roman author about someone who praising a friend who had written a book, that you have made a work more lasting than bronze. That, someone made a statue or made a monument out of bronze. The physical things, transient. That you have composed a book which is retransmitted and recopied over time. Knowledge survives. Knowledge survives and is a work more lasting than bronze. And I will still be referring back to essays he wrote, that it's good that I can, more than most of us, when some of the people online die, and you wonder, well, where do their essays go, where do their videos go, but this is one of the few fans who you can walk into a bookstore and find his semi-pro professional analysis book. I don't know if it's still in print, but at the time I have seen copies of it in bookstores back in 2017. But buy his book, you put it on your list of things you're going to check out, and we have now. And please check out the link to the better article by people who really, his collaborators who were talking about his passing there. But I felt he deserved a video.